Welcome to Belief, Being, and Beyond with your host, Granddaughter Crow. Hi, everybody. Granddaughter Crow here with yet another episode of Belief, Being, and Beyond. I found another jewel for you guys. I found another gem. I found an author. I found a yoga instructor. I found a person that will help you with trauma resolution. It's amazing. So let me just let you know who I have with me today before I bring her on. I have Jacqueline Jackson, a writer, yoga practitioner, and group facilitator with the Other Parents Like Me network, which I'm going to ask her about. That looks exciting. And she is experienced, she's a registered yoga teacher, right? Very experienced. Jacqueline has completed a year-long comprehensive yoga therapy certification and trauma-informed yoga certification. I have talked to a lot of people doing yoga, but I've never met somebody who has done trauma-informed yoga certification, and we're going to get into it. She also is certified in the Somatic EMDR and trained in the Invitation to Change approach from the Center for Motivational Change. I love this, all about healing. Jackie is a member of the International Association of Yoga Therapists and is the author of Holistic Trauma Healing Strategies to Integrate the Body, Mind, and Spirit, as well as Urge Overkill. Urge Overkill, a story of breaking free. Let's welcome our beautiful, beautiful guest, Jacqueline Jackson. I love it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Granddaughter Crow. What an intro and what an honor and a pleasure to be with you. Loving your book too. And
Oh,
I don't know
thank
if guests usually do it, but I'm going to plug it right here. It's on my nightstand. Shamanism in Your Shadow. And I'm so enjoying it. I'm almost done already, as you can see. And
you.
it's been, I love the parallels I've been drawing, and I learned so much. Thank you for that and the
Now,
introduction.
speaking of the parallels that you're drawing, it's really kind of interesting because those parallels in my book about shamanism in your shadow have a lot of parallels with what you do, who you are, and your approach. And, with the holistic trauma healing and how they weave in together. I want to get your impression, your words behind this, but how shadow work and trauma therapy interweave when we are looking at it from the position of holistic healing. Mine from shamanism, which is a form of embodiment, earth-based, and yours through so much, but highlighting through the yoga. So, how do you see the dovetail between shamanism in your shadow and holistic trauma healing, your latest book released by Llewellyn 2025 August?
That's such a good question. Thank you, Granddaughter Crow. When I was reading your book, I was really kind of struck by like how the shadow's not something we want to banish. I love the ending part. I did sneak peek ahead, the note to your shadow that was so beautiful. And it reminded me when I was doing my certification in somatic EMDR, what a psychologist or a therapist, especially trauma informed or EMDR therapists, call parts work. I've also heard it called, and I'll love to hear your perspective too. Um, so soul retrieval. I've heard these different names, and I think, but it's like this integrated part of our nervous systems, like the wisdom, where pain, protection, and the potential kind of all come together. And so just reclaiming our wholeness. And it's interesting the ties to yoga, which you often hear in a yoga class the phrase namaste, which means that the light of the divine within me sees and acknowledges that same light within you. And when we're in this place, we're the same. And so, one of the main theory. My main point of my book is that it's like these survival strategies or parts of us that we did, we needed to use to survive. These old strategies that don't work anymore, it's like we're dusting them off. And we're like excavating the real, true divine self within. And so I always like to start by saying that we're not broken. We're excavating the true divine self. And so we're not here to fix anyone, but to find strategies. And it's sometimes these little things that sound like not much throughout the day that we might do, which I'm sure we'll delve into more. Like what maybe your listeners like, oh, what's something practical I can take with me? And so, these ways are just ways that we can, over time, become bigger shifts. At least I can speak for myself, who is the proverbial guinea pig in my book. I tried this all out myself, and then each chapter, covers a modality. Um, and then there's DIY. There's like 44 practices. But I'll just say that for me, what really led me to write it and read about it and research it was my background I was a newspaper reporter at one point. And so from a journalist view, I was like, I realized if you've ever heard the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, who wrote In the Realm of the Hungry Ghost, he's a trauma kind of rock star, I'll just call him that, who has done documentaries on the wisdom of trauma I just loved, he nailed it. It was like a little bell went off in my head when I read how, there's all these great therapies out there, but what's lacking is an integration and like how do we put them together? So I hope that to create like a menu for people to be like, okay, these are options. It's just like a trauma-informed yoga class because you're in charge. Because what's missing in trauma a lot of times, what's missing in trauma, it sounds like all the research shows that is a choice. And so you have a choice, and this is like, here's your options. Here's how you can interact with them free, DIY, do it yourself. And then here's all the evidence in the back. And then how can we integrate it all together? So, and I love that no one heard this, but Granddaughter Crow mentioned to me when we talked the first time about, oh, you have spider medicine. I was like, ding, ding, another ding, a little chills in my body because I was like, oh, I really resonated with this medicine card that I've had from Jamie Sands and David Carson. And I had to go back because I'm like, this is what it is, integration. And so this is how I hope to present it to people so they can find their way by
Yes.
integrating things in a way that's authentic to them. And we do hope that a lot of times people hear the word trauma and it's like stigma, it has a kind of a stigma to it. Because who wants to read about trauma? Like I've had people being like, oh, no, thanks. I don't really want to spend my time reading that book. And I totally get it.
Yeah.
Except that it's actually about lightening up or enlightenment. Like how can we lighten up? Like, and so
Yeah.
there's themes in there about, and I didn't wear the necklace, but my friend and I share it. It says choose joy. Like, when it, especially in the dark times. So these are some of the things.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So, for the listeners, when I was talking with Jacqueline, it was in everything that she said, she was weaving. She was integrating, just like you saw what she did with the interweaving between shamanism and your shadow, as well as the holistic trauma healing. And that interweaving is something that I also want to highlight because here's your next question. Psychology, trauma, a lot of times people, think, well, trauma is in the mind and then it goes into the body, into the nervous system. Your approach is a mind, body, spirit. So, can you tell us what is mind, body, spirit, and what does that look like? Why did you take the approach of mind, body, spirit when you're talking about trauma? You little weaver lady, you.
He's a spider.
The spider.
That's a great question. Thank you for that question. Well, for me, my work comes from a professional and a personal lens. So I think all of us have things in our lives that have been challenging to various degrees. And so um, what like brings me to, some of the things about my self that was like, okay, so when I was back in college, I worked at a domestic violence and rape shelter, the Center County Women's Shelter. And and then like when I was working in social work, I was like a crisis interventionist. I had my own experience overcoming domestic violence, the subject of my first book. And then later I had a cancer diagnosis. So for me, it was personal, although, and also over the last 24 years, I've been working is teaching yoga, as we talked about, which is very much body, mind, and spirit, the integration. Like yoga means yog, comes from the root word yog, which means to yoke or to bind, to bring together. And so, and it's so cool how the research from people like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote the seminal work, The Body Keeps the Score. One of his, if I could condense everything I've learned when I went up to Kripalu and got to do his intensive, it's like when there's trauma or when we get overwhelmed, and it's very subjective. Like two people in one family can have the same experience, what you would think is the same experience, but one can be like kind of traumatized. It's like alive in their nervous system. They're kind of, they might be showing signs of dysregulation or just like, oh, nightmares, like the things that make it seem like it's still happening because of the neuroscience behind it. It kind of still in the mind, like the amygdala is firing off. So, it was so cool that if I could condense that whole time with him and when in reading his book, which is a tough read, his book on trauma, but and he said those are his words, but because it's beautiful, but it's like wow, that's some heavy stuff. But I thought you could boil it down to one thing. It's like when there's this overwhelm, the head goes up in the clouds, but the body keeps the score. And it's like, oh, so we have to get back in the body to heal. And in yoga, I just had a class this morning and my meditation, and we say in yoga, the issues are in the tissues. So when you're doing you're doing a pose or you're working on your body, there's this, we call it embodiment, which is physical mindfulness. It's like,
Yeah.
we realize, like, I'm like, oh, what is that? Okay. For me, for example, I'll use myself as the proverbial guinea pig. When I got a cancer diagnosis, it was a thyroid cancer. So it's throat chakra or the energy center of the body. Like, what does that tell us besides the mind? Like, patterns of thinking or and I can relate in this particular instance to getting the diagnosis. So I now work on I think advocacy is my way of like putting it out in the world, and is part of my healing process. So I work with the Live Strong Cancer Survivor program here in my town. I'm in Connecticut, out a New York City suburb. And so I now work there, like I help run this free program, and we've done it like 7 times over the last couple of years. So we'll just keep going. But it's for people who are, have a diagnosis, and what we all have experienced or share. The shared experience is huge, number one for healing, that integration. And then also this idea that like our mind can be a little tricky because I remember thinking this dark cloud was over me, like, oh, I wake up, oh, I feel good. And then I'm like, oh, except for that, what's happening? And so,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, sometimes I laugh when things are dark. So don't mind me.
Sure.
It's a little bit, that's my gallows
I'm
humor.
into it. I'm into it. Let's laugh away because some things are really dark, but that laughter moves that energy and releases
Yes.
that energy.
I love that. And I hope you'll talk maybe about, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I was learning about the rattle in your work and I was like, oh, I have one. And later today. I'm going to try that. But how do we move the energy and how do we what like how does the what are the messages and like how do we safely release tension? Like how do we feel safe? And
Yeah.
I think it's a long-winded answer to the question of how you might need to reframe it for me again if I'm getting I hope I'm getting to it
Oh,
about how is the integration. So yeah, for me, I think like we do the body, we get into the body, we help ourselves feel safe, and whether, it's something like this open-handed mudra at our heart. Some people call it the heart high five. But like, I'll give an example for myself, like when I was going through this like kind of dark cloud of the cancer diagnosis, my mind was oscillating. It was ruminating. It felt like a bad neighborhood. I'm like, I don't want to be in here by myself. And so I was like, I really had to use all my tools from yoga and just my life and my spirituality, my guides. I really needed to like hone in with that. And so I think the integration has kind of been in the burner for me, like kind of in the background. It's like an authentic thing for me.
yeah.
Yet, what the more I learned, as I was like getting the all the evidence base down, I thought it's so interesting that like the how these things all come together and they can be so helpful. And that's what I hope people um, come away with this. Like this is your toolkit, and I hope at the end, and sometimes when I've spoken on like parent support networks, I'll like create a toolkit and then it's like here's some basic ones we've talked about. We tried them out, and then come up with yours, like what works for you. And so that's what I hope people get from it, and kind of the basis of the integration. That I hope I answered your question, Granddaughter
Oh,
Crow.
absolutely. I think it's really beautiful. I like a number of things that you were saying, but I think that the whole thing is that like when your head goes up into the clouds and your body is keeping the score, then maybe you're not going to trauma resolution or reading the holistic trauma healing for your head as much as for your body. I don't know. It's just something that is like, if you can't wrap your mind around it, we're not sitting here going, lay on a couch and tell me about all of your trauma. It's a somatic
Mm,
experience where your body, your tissue, your muscles are able to relieve this without maybe even revisiting exactly what the initial trauma is. Okay, good. I hit something there. Tell me about
you
that.
did. You just nailed a very important truth, and it's a theme with all the top trauma experts that right now, and as of today, in my experience, that talking about it can create a narrative, but we don't want to, it's like kind of like ripping off a scab that's been healing. We don't want to keep doing that. And that's kind of the beauty of some of uh, the things like EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization retraining. And whether it's in like a coaching capacity, which is my background. So I have to say too, I'm not a therapist or a scientist. So that I always like to say. But from a coaching standpoint and my certification, um, and as having done EMDR myself too, because again, I use these therapies myself and have been trained in some of the as a Reiki master and in the chakra system and throughout the yoga, journey and the certifications. Um, it's funny the nice thing about something like a EMDR is it works directly in your brain. So, but the amygdala, when something overwhelming happens subjectively, it's going off. And I know I probably don't need to say a word to you, but maybe I'll just say it to the audience because I
Oh,
know you know.
no.
I
No,
already read about you
it
knowing
is
all this.
worth
There's a
it's
fire alarm. And then the prefrontal cortex, like the rational thinking, the parent in the room goes offline because but then things like EMDR, which is so interesting to me. So rather than talking about it, for example, you can do the bilateral tapping, the eye movement with it could be a therapy, a finger of the therapist. Sometimes they use lights. They use kinesthetic tapping paddles. You can do it on your thighs or, tap yourself. But what that does is it sounds so simple. Like, how the heck is that going to help me? But it's interesting because then it activates the hippocampus, which timestamps it and helps move it into the past so that the the amygdala can stop firing off, turn off the fire alarm. And then the prefrontal cortex can come back in. And then we hope, that we can move forward with sometimes it's called post-traumatic growth. Like there's, trauma is not good. We don't want it to happen to anyone. We don't wish it on anyone. Yet there are things like positive things that can come from it. So for me, I love that I can work with other cancer survivors or people in the process. And I love that they're together talking to each other. And,
Yes.
some of the top therapist tips are like, oh, finding your people. It's nothing like people who get it. If you can hang out with those people, and that's huge. And the connection is amazing to have that connection. And then to like kind of like, for example, my first book is about overcoming domestic violence. And it's so interesting because I had already been trained, yet it still came up for me because it's so prevalent in our society. So it's like 1 out of 4 women and 1 out of 7 men in their lifetime will experience domestic violence. But people can and do get better every day. So, like some of the opening of my book is just, it has some statistics in it, like 70% of Americans have experienced at least one traumatic uh, incident in their lifetime. But then on the other hand, people can and do get better. So we have about, for example, of people, we have about, let's see, 23 million people in recovery from addiction in America right now. So it's amazing that there's like this hope, and we hope that we're lightening up in the process by being safe in our body, and then we can tap into our belief system, whatever that may be, and we can give ourselves some grace. So with little practices throughout, maybe you get like me, I love little practices throughout my day. I like, how do I just embody this throughout my day? So
You know what? I absolutely love that, Jackie, that it's kind of like, at the beginning, you're like, oh, well, people see the word trauma and they're like, no, 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 no. What if we were just to say, people, you don't have to define it. If you don't feel safe in your body, if you know somebody who doesn't feel safe in their body, maybe their body, their amygdala, they're in a past event. And this book is really good for you to pick up because it does have, like she said it, DIY, do it yourself. This is such a beautiful, it works with so many different things that you don't need to go out and get a bunch of equipment. You just need to remember how to breathe, stretch or, the different modalities.
yeah,
And
and I should mention too, so I don't misrepresent that trauma is known, like research based to not really, it's hard for it to just go away if we don't address it. So I say in conjunction with so if there is trauma, then I hope that people can use the resources and be like, okay, maybe EMDR is kind of something I would be comfortable with, or maybe I like, the strength based or the positive psychology, or maybe I love music. And it's like, I would love that. Like, for example, I met this music therapist who's I research in the book, and my husband's a musician. I sing, and our whole family is really into music. And I find that in my talks and with my own children, and they seem to respond to it. So one of the practices is like, what's your favorite songs and what do they mean to you and resonate with you now? And that sounds pretty simple, but like on the parent support groups on the network, when I've spoken there, that one worked with the kids. It works with my kids, and it works at Metro Hospital in Harlem. They have a whole music therapy. There's a woman who's the clinical director, so she's like, we do psychiatry and music therapy along with the other things we do. And so they mostly work with the a homeless population in the area. And unfortunately, sometimes the medical term is subclinical, that some people feel like, oh, like the worry is that like we got to help. How do we support these? How can we support people? This is a challenging population. They're in a hard place. And she said, it's amazing how it works. So she's the blues is one of the favorite thing. That's one of the favorite modalities. So everybody can beat the crap out of a drum. It sucks to be here. I don't
Yes.
want to be here, but this is keeping me from becoming incarcerated or acting out in a way that is going to get me in trouble. And not only that, but it's a beautiful expression that's celebrated, and everybody can relate to music. And so there's a whole other piece on sound healing and the vibrational healing. And some people might love devotional chanting, or you sing at your church choir, or you like the sound bowls, or resonance of all kinds of sorts these
I
days.
I love it. You really have done your job in providing us with a menu. And I love that because it almost makes me think, how many techniques are we doing subconsciously to help us to return to our body? I mean, that's lovely. Jackie, since you're talking about, the different advocacies, and I caught it in your bio, and I've got to ask, what is Other Parents Like Me?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love this network. So Other Parents Like Me is a compassionate, it's a national subscription-based network. It's for caregivers whose kiddos are struggling. And I met the CEO. Actually, I just got to meet her in person for the first time. We've known each other for 5 years, like this, and
Like,
it's online. So, and I have met a lot of the parents. Um, but for me, I was working on, my own stuff, my own traumas, as I mentioned, and I started writing this in about 2016 and doing the research and and all that. But in 2019, my one son, started to really struggle. And so in the process of like researching, of course, I was like, researching and figuring out what kind of resources he could go to, like, and so at that time I met Casey Ferriello. And she was like recommended by this one program as a parent you could talk to for the real lowdown. It's like, what is really like, is this good? Like, what happened with your son? And it was so interesting because she is an amazing person. And then I get to meet her last week. We just went to this conference for therapeutic boarding school. So that's kind of full circle here because she's like, bring your book. Come on, we're going to go meet everybody. And she's an amazing human. And so she started this network because it was missing. Like there's all these people, like, so for example, I'll talk about my experience. In my experience, there's a crisis or someone gets a diagnosis, or someone's in trouble, and like here we are, we're like, oh my God, like trying to figure out, research specialists. All the specialists we see have subspecialties, and like they weigh in and they tell you one small piece, and you're wading through all this information.
yeah.
And then you're like fighting with insurance, and then all while you're fighting for your life. I mean, it was like, and so for me, I'm like, this is missing. Like, why don't I, where's where's all the stuff put together? So that was what really brought me on board to Other Parents Like Me. And so it's been about 3.5 years that I've been a peer parent facilitator, and I've taught the trauma-informed yoga. And then there's various groups throughout the week that I do. So I currently have a Tuesday and a Friday, and then I also used to do the trauma. We had one on trauma, of course, and we changed it because people don't want to talk about trauma. They don't, they did. It was very popular for a while, but then it
Right.
sounds kind of dark. So we were like, let's switch, flip the script here. And so we call it gratitude and tea now, which is funny, but it's wonderful because we call ourselves the unshockable people. So you can come in and you can talk about your story or your challenge as a caregiver. Some people are sandwich caregivers. They're taking care of their parents and their children. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And so this is the way that like we do like in our groups, we do like an opening centering meditation. We have specific topics like boundaries, and the things from the invitation to change or what's called community reinforcement and family training. And that kind of that's from the Center for Motivational Change. And they were the people who wrote this really important book called Beyond Addiction, Dr. Jeffrey Foote. And it's all about compassion and kindness and science. So they put it together so that it can help people. And you can use it with anyone. You don't need to be focused on addiction or mental health, or it could be, whether someone has cancer, whatever the diagnosis is. And even just with your friend, or like I use it all the time. The techniques are just provide these frameworks of how do you help yourself change? Like, where are you at in the stages? And know that change. A lot of people are ambiguous with change. A lot of us, and we can relay that to anything, like even like I'm going to lose weight, for example. I want to lose weight. Okay, we say that's a goal. How hard is it to be like, oh, I slipped up and I had that pizza last night, And the same thing is if someone's struggling with addiction or they're struggling with any change you're trying to make. And so the focus is on realizing this, that change, you can feel ambiguous. There's no one size fits all. And if you're going to speak with people, even your self-talk, it's like using positive, speaking, I statements, understanding, shared responsibility. So they have some beautiful work out there that's applicable to anybody. And if we don't want to talk about trauma, we can say chronic stress, which is like an epidemic in our country, with 24/7 connectivity.
Yeah.
We just got through a pandemic. We have there's an opioid epidemic. There's joblessness. There's a political upheaval. We all know climate change. So all these things, it's like just being modern, and even the 24/7 connectivity right now, it's estimated that these days as a human, we have 50 times more life experience than anybody who ever existed before us, which is a lot and contributes to, there's an increased, for example, one small example.
Gray hair. Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm all
yes, gray hair.
six
Let's leave it at
times.
that. But there's, I'm trying. So anyway, yeah.
No, I love that. And what's so beautiful about this is that you're not just a professor studying one form of trauma resolution. You are approaching it as an advocate, you are approaching it as a journalist, you're approaching it as someone with a personal experience, which is why this book is so practical and gives us each because it meets us where we are. And when meeting us where we are, you predicted, I would love for you to share do it yourself right now. People pull over if you're driving. No, you can go home and replay. I mean, this is a recording. You can hit. But can you share with us something that would help the listener
Yeah.
with some trauma resolution?
Right. We can do a couple, but like the one of the simplest ones was the one I mentioned, the heart. Well, I'm going to do a different one. Let's do this one. Okay, so if you want, if everybody's comfortable, I just invite you to get comfortable. Like you might put your feet on the ground. Maybe you want to put your hands on your thighs as a grounding kind of technique. And just kind of tune in and maybe you want to, some people like containment. So maybe you put your hands on your belly. And so let's take a belly breath. So inhale, expand your belly. And then on the exhale, let it contract and soften back to your spine. And we'll just kind of deepen our breath and notice how you're sitting. Like, are we kind of perched a little forward or slumped a little back? And we just kind of let ourselves center and settle at center best we can. And as we take a couple breaths in our belly, we can let ourselves center. And this is so simple to do belly breaths. And did you know that your belly, if you can expand your belly, we're always taught to suck it in. And now we're saying, we're going to give you permission, just expand it like a balloon. And as we do that, the diaphragm hugs inward. So that's a little dome-shaped organ right under your ribs. So if we expand our belly, the diaphragm hugs in, and that way we breathe all the way down to our belly. Most people are just breathing into their chest, which is kind of fight or flight. So if we can go and let the belly, then the ribs and the chest, we're kind of letting it expand, like filling up the whole torso as if up to the base of the throat and to the sides of your torso, just expanding your belly. And then exhale, you let it contract. You might even squeeze it in at the bottom of your breath to squeeze any stale air from your low lungs. And now, if you like, we could try the butterfly hug. So it's like wrapping your thumbs and placing your fingers maybe below your collarbones. And as you kind of feel the pressure of this of the, you can it's containing yourself in your body because we can bring ourselves back into the breath, into the body, into the present moment, and we might orient ourselves. So that is simply turning our head. Maybe we start looking to the right side of your space. So just taking it and like turning your head and let your gaze shift forward across your periphery, taking in the objects and the colors, and then just let your head turn to the left, being aware of your space now and everything within it, textures, nice and slow. And notice, if you're ready, that the way the light is hitting the objects in your space, and just with the realization that this moment will never be replicated again. And once you're kind of oriented into your space, you might, let your gaze come back to each other here. And this is the butterfly hug. So it's like almost you could think of it like we do it in somatic EMDR, but this is an abbreviated version. So say there's a hard time in the day. Someone cuts you off, or you get a note from your boss is like, "Ugh," you feel the amygdala. You feel this like fire alarm going off. And it's like, okay, all right, I see what's going on here. So a couple belly breaths, and then we could tap. So here's the butterfly tapping. So it could go, we can tap both hands together. Or if you felt like it, you could even do the bilateral, the side to side, right, left, right, left, and maybe do it 10 times. If it's not too busy, you could do a little slow turn of your head if you want, or you can just stay steady, but we keep it as simple as possible. So whether you want to just tap, but maybe you try 10 times. And this is kind of helping to process and calm our nervous system. So we see how it feels to us here. And after we've tapped to, maybe the 10 times, and there's no rush here, but, after you tap, you might pause. Maybe you want to maybe take a couple other more belly breaths. You can't see it, but I'm holding my hand on my belly. Okay. If you like that, I happen to like that. So, and then we just like kind of check in, like, okay, there was this moment, it was raw, kind of, I felt the alarm going off, and now how do I feel? And sometimes people just tap again, or they might, be ready to be like, okay, that's good, so you can continue it, but it's a really short one that, like, say something happens and you're like, I'm going to step outside now and do my little butterfly hug. And that's a simple a little practice that's abbreviated, and it's similar to the somatic EMDR that we do as I do as a coach, and it's like it helps to process this strong emotion. And sometimes we'll even scale it. We'll say like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, where am I at now? One's the most calm, five's like the most agitated, and then we see it's just like an experiment. Is the number going down? And so I am lucky because I get to share it on these networks and these classes and with clients and on myself. And a lot of people find it really helpful. And I'll finish by saying it's so interesting, speaking of integration, granddaughter Crow, that in yoga, this is called Garuda Mudra, or it's the gesture of the eagle. And if you were to look it up in the ancient text, they say it helps to integrate the right and left hemispheres of your brain. Boom! It's like amazing that these techniques, whether they're from 3,500 years ago or modern day science, very similar, a lot of crossover. And so
Love
yeah,
it.
these are, I think that fascinates me. So I mentioned that.
Me too. It's ancient, age-old wisdom that we just keep tapping into.
Oh, you're, wait, yours, yeah, that was good. I love that. But
You
it's
know,
true.
you know what? I definitely felt a shift. And I mean, I'm like, okay, granddaughter Crow, you can't just like go and play now. You got to get back in this interview. So I'm like, I was like at a one. I was like, we're
Oh,
good. We're
beautiful.
good. So here is the beauty, and this is how I would kind of like to wrap it up. And I'll give you a second to think about it. What is after trauma? And before I ask you what is after trauma, you guys check out JacquelineJackson.net. Follow on Instagram. Everything is located down below. Jackie the Yoga Scribe. Follow on Instagram. Follow if this is making sense, because to me, it's so grounded. It's not scary. She'll change the language if you're triggered by the word trauma. And so, here on Belief, Being, and Beyond, we have what is beyond, Jackie. What is it that we are trying to do? And what was the experience after we can start being released? And I know that, healing the trauma. And I know that you also say that healing isn't linear, but what is the like prize? What do we get for all this work?
What a great question. So if we're lightening up, in yoga we call that enlightenment, but I'd say that the healing isn't about becoming someone new, but remembering who we always were beneath the pain, the challenges of life, but also the beauty too. So they all coexist. It's beautiful. It's amazing. There's challenging dark times, but there's these amazing moments. Like if I look out my window, I have a hummingbird feeder right outside, and I like to zoom in and be like, right now, or as Thich Nhat Hanh, the meditation master, would say, there's no bombs busting through the ceiling right now. I'm okay. But these like little reminders help us, like, I'd want people to carry with them, like, just remembering, like, and in yoga, we say, like, for the heart chakra, for example, this energy center of the heart is called Anahata chakra, and it means unstuck or unbroken. And it's that this is this beautiful strength and light within. And it's amazing that we can connect to it and that it's always there. So afterwards, as we're healing, we're just working towards enlightenment, which is this lifetime, many lifetimes. I don't know how that's going to all go, but it's just like I find that amazing, and that where we talk about the collective consciousness, I would say at the beginning of the book, I could say like these challenges with like modern life. But at the same time, as we say on the other parents like me, as we heal ourselves, we heal our family. And I always think of all of us like a tapestry connected, or like a crystalline network. And as each lights up, it could be a beautiful radiance that we can offer to the rest of the all beings everywhere. So
I
um,
love that. The unstuck heart, or being unstuck. And
yeah.
I absolutely love that because, when we're going through our days, people, sometimes, you don't even realize that you're just like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I just feel stuck. I know, I'm just like selling your book, renaming it, retitling it for all of the people who can look at this menu. But there are a lot of things that, when we feel unstuck or put in the past because of that trauma, and we want to move forward. We want to be our authentic self. We want to feel safe within our body. Then we have that ability through this beautiful menu, holistic trauma healing. Jacqueline, I just really appreciate you. And I'm wondering, and thank you so much for writing
Thank
this
you.
book for us. Is there any last thing that you would like to say to the listening audience?
Oh, well, I would say that may you find light in the pages and your own formula, and I think that can be pretty fun to be like, oh, well, I'm a person who likes to sing. So for me, I joined this competitive choir for the throat chakra stuff. I thought I'm learning to sing now, and it's so cool because it's also uncomfortable because we're so competitive. 2 weeks ago, we had our international competition. I was like, okay, this is cool, but also terrifying. And then somatic EMDR, we say, we
Okay.
say if breathing, if we like anxiety becomes excitement if we breathe through it. So may we find these practical tools with this, work. And I don't know if you have time to ask you a question. Like, do you like with your shadow work? I mean, I think the animal base, I'm obsessed with that. And I just wonder what that's how you see the crossover with your beautiful book, if you don't mind me asking. If we don't have
Oh,
time,
no, that's a perfect question. I mean, we began with the integration, and look at you, you little spider woman. Now you're integrating and weaving our books again. It's perfect bookends for this podcast. The beauty around it is we're saying the same thing in different languages. The reason why I'm working, I mean, shadow, trauma, these are scary things. But the truth is that the reason why I work with the wisdom of the natural world and the expressions of the animal kingdom is to embody ourselves, to look outside of a humanized psychological lay on the couch and talk about it. And so, this let's work with the raven and the snake and the wolf and the owl. And so I guess the best way to explain it is to reflect back on what you just said, that this technique is also known as the eagle in some older things. Well, it's the same thing. I'm doing the eagle. I'm bringing the eagle. I'm just not doing it in a yoga thing, which would kind of be fun if we could get together and do yoga poses for the four like shadow animals to
oh,
to help that. We never know, people. We never know. But with that,
yes.
I just love, love, love having you on the show with your expertise, so humble and graceful. And you can talk to Jackie, JacquelineJackson.net, and you can connect with her. She's got stuff going on. Definitely pick up this book, buy it for yourself, buy it for a friend, buy it for your parent and your child so that you don't have to sandwich. I'm just saying, I'm just saying.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I know it's Christmas time. Let's buy this. But nevertheless, thank you so much for writing this book, for living a life that makes holistic trauma healing tangible. As an example, if Jacqueline can do it, I can do it too. So, anyway, thank you,
Thank
listeners.
you so much. Yes, and if people do reach out to me, I actually do get back to you. And if you want to reach out, I'll send you one of those little, here's the toolkit, like here's some ideas, and then so reach out. I do get back to people. I'm into reaching
Again,
out. So don't be shy.
JacquelineJackson.net. Reach out and you get a free gift. You heard it here. I believe Being and Beyond with Granddaughter Crow. Nevertheless, people hit the like, subscribe, notification. And if this one is one that you are like, whoa, there's something here, pick up the book, share this podcast, and always, 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 you are loved. And I will see you on the flippity flip.